Hello and welcome to my channel. So there's been a lot that's happened since the last time I uploaded. You know, we could just run down the list real quick. First things first, we had the Emmys and we had some really great wins by some important ladies that night. Sheryl Ralph gave a wonderful speech about the power of never giving up. And if you haven't heard it, I will link it below in some way, some form or fashion. We've also had the funeral that's been going on for the recently departed Queen of England. And I will say this about her and that whole thing. And it goes back to a video that I made about Meghan Markle a few weeks ago. Every time Meghan is over there, and you know, I'm only going to talk about this aspect of it because there's so much you can say about just what's happening within the royal family, but I don't think I'm the right person to talk about it, so I won't. That's something new I'm practicing. But I do see the way the British press, you know, they still talk about Meghan and they still treat her. And I think when I made my video, what people thought I was saying is because Meghan didn't see herself as a Black woman, I thought she should be hounded and made fun of and mocked. And that's just not, that's not at all what I was saying. I hope I've made it clear what I've said since then, but every time she goes over there and they say things about her and they talk about her, it's just how much can one person, I don't know if I would have married Harry, to be honest with you. I don't know. I knowing all of that, I don't think there's any way she could have known, but like that's a lot. It's a mess. It's hard. I could just imagine, like, emotionally, I could just imagine every time you go coming home, like how long it would take to process all of, you know, the negative, but yeah, I in no way meant that I wanted to see her ripped apart just because she didn't view herself or didn't expect to be treated as a Black woman or was surprised by that. I meant exactly what I said in that video. But anyway, moving on, I do want to talk for a second about the Little Mermaid backlash that I'm seeing. So I initially thought that when it was announced that there was going to be a Black Little Mermaid and they released a trailer, that sort of, I don't know, everybody was kind of on board with it being a beautiful thing. And it is now my feeling deep within my soul that Disney should not release that movie. Okay, let me do a quick little interlude here before everybody gets whiplash from what I just said versus what I said in my last video. So I'm about to explain why I'm actually afraid for what happens when the movie is released. I think that's how I should have phrased it here. I am now afraid of what is going to happen when the movie is released. I do still think the movie should come out. Obviously, like it's coming out. It doesn't matter what I believe. But after seeing the way that the public has reacted, I'm wondering if the plan to make this movie and to produce it and put it out was a well thought out plan and idea by the Disney powers that be, especially when we've seen how people can react when they are really, really against something happening. And while I do believe that it's necessary to create characters and help people see things in new ways, and I do think that for the overall greater good, it's a good idea. I just, after seeing the way people were acting and how ridiculous, it just made me wonder if a Disney movie was the right vehicle to try and impact that kind of societal change. So anyway, I'm about to explain some other reasons why I am afraid for the movie to be released. But I just wanted to do this little interlude here because I know I made a whole other video where I was like, oh, I love Ariel, I was crying. And all those things are still true, but now I'm a little nervous. The internet has me a little nervous. That's all. Let me explain. So it started, this kind of change in me started on Twitter. When I saw this on Twitter, I saw this right here, and I hope that I'm pointing in the right place. I don't think I am. I think I'm pointing backwards, but hopefully when I'm editing this, I just put something over my face, honestly. But I saw this on Twitter and I was like, are you kidding? There are people planning on taking her face within 24 hours, taking Halle Bailey's face and CGIing her or AIing her, using an AI system to turn her into a white woman with red hair. There is deep, deep support for this across the internet. Also, it was brought to my attention just how fully disliked the trailer was. People were upset. Finally, I was online and I was listening to just people talk, and there was a young woman, she's a young Black woman, and she basically said, you know, she thinks it's a cop-out for Black people to say that, or for anybody to say that somebody who doesn't want a Black mermaid is racist. Because what it is people just are passionately in love with their version of this character. And I totally understand that. And I also understand that for me, a heartbreaking moment of representation and realization And something that I feel is owed Black women in general by this country, I felt like it would be damaged or corrupted by the audience reception that this movie is inevitably going to receive. And I'm not alone in this. I saw a couple people posting online that because of the outrage, because of the backlash, because of plans to completely transform her body with AI and put out a version of the movie where Ariel is white, I don't even know if it would be safe for the movie to be released in theaters. Like, I will probably still buy a ticket just to support, but I don't know if I want to go in theaters and watch it. I don't know. Are we going to have a January 6th level of revolution in the theaters? Like, are people going to maybe just really, really lose their minds because there is a Black mermaid on their screens? When it comes to The Little Mermaid, I'm like, Disney, you know, it's almost like a Jurassic Park moment where you were so excited that you didn't stop to maybe think of whether or not you should. And I'm not saying that as somebody who doesn't want to see it. I do. I think it's a beautiful thing. I would love to see it. And I'm very excited about the representation of Black women in fantasy roles. I do understand that. I do love that. But what are we really accomplishing here if the reaction is going to be this? What are we really... We are giving this young lady a pedestal. We are putting this movie out. I'm saying we, like I'm on the board of something. I'm not. But at what cost? At what cost are children going to be safe going to see this? I'm worried, you guys. I'm genuinely afraid of what the reaction is going to be because, you know, I think we want to assume and we want to believe that people are progressive and that they're able to bend and move around, but they're not. And this almost reminds me of when Obama got elected and everybody said, you know, after he left the office for 8 years and then Trump came in, everybody said that Trump was the nation's way of repaying Obama for his 8 years of progression. Like, first of all, being a Black man in the White House and then passing the laws that he did with healthcare and with gay marriage. I feel like when you feel like you're progressing in one way, instead of taking a group of people with you, what happens is a divide is created and a certain part of society chooses to very, very staunchly stay behind. And to take it back to Obama really quickly, he said at one point, I'm not only the president for the, you know, extremely liberal, well-educated, you know, whomever at the protest rally, but I'm also the president for the person in the small town who hates me, who hates Black people. And I have to think about all of us. And so I think about that same thing with this movie. I'm like, okay, Disney, you're not only the entertainment company for the little Black girls who need to see themselves on screen and who are all on board for this beautiful moment with Halle Bailey and this new Little Mermaid situation, but you're also the media company for a lot of other people with other thoughts and other feelings. And even though, you know, some people could say, well, forget them. You know, we're doing this now. I'm not talking about the racist people here. I'm talking about the people who really loved and grew up with and identified with Ariel looking one way. Disney people are diehard. I just don't know if it was a smart business decision to leave them behind. I just don't know. As a result, I'm wondering if this is a smart move to make. And I'm also wondering, are they protecting Halle Bailey? Is she going to be protected? Because these are some fools. If you've been on the internet and you've been watching and listening and paying attention, these people are pissed. And one thing I will say is that when I think about like Disney World and Disney trips after this movie, is the OG Ariel no longer going to be around? Or are we going to have two Ariels? Are we going to have Halle and Ariel together? Like how are we planning on doing that? I hope they've probably thought about all of these things, but me and several other people online were sort of thinking that maybe it should just be something released to Disney Plus instead of in theaters, because I don't know how people are going to act. I really don't. I fully expect some protests. And I can't imagine bringing a little Black girl there, a baby girl who doesn't understand, bringing her there to watch the movie, and she has to witness any kind of like racial violence, even if it's just people saying really nasty things. And it's just like, at what cost? To see a Disney movie? Is it that serious? I know a lot of people were saying, well, you know, they should have just done a live action Princess and the Frog. They should have just told Black stories. I do agree that maybe an original fairy tale would have fared better with audience response. But I also want to say that a lot of times when you tell Black stories, a lot of the audience stays at home because they're like, oh, I don't see myself in that. That's not for me. So I do understand Disney's general desire to incorporate Halle and to say, okay, we're going to do ... And we're going to put you in here and you're going to be great because you embody the spirit of the mermaid. That's what the casting director said about her. But I do also think that just as a company, you have to consider, is the response going to be worth the effort? Is it going to be worth it? And is it something that we really need to do? And I don't know. I don't know if they thought about all of that. I don't know if they knew how poorly. I wonder, there's probably some Disney execs who are surprised at how poorly people have taken this. And, when I think about it, I'm like, I don't know how they're surprised, because even if you're not a racist, the only reason why I was like, okay, this movie is good, I want to see this, is because I am a Black woman who has felt underrepresented. But if I don't have that, hat in the ring, and I see this on screen, I don't know. Like, how am I gonna, I probably am not going to give a damn. I want to see my characters. I want to see them as I know them. And I'm not going to sit here and invalidate those feelings, unless they're, of course, racist feelings like Black people can't be mermaids and this and that and you can't do. Then I don't care. Then I'm just like, you go sit somewhere. But yeah, so that's kind of like where I feel, what I feel on that. So feel free to tell me how you feel about that in the comments, because yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about having a Black mermaid. I can't wait to see Halle play this role, but I just don't know if it's going to turn out positively for her as an actress, for people that go see the movie, for Disney commercially. I'm wondering what will happen, if this is going to be a swing and a miss or a positive thing. I'm not sure. But let's get to this video. Let's talk about what I want to talk about in this video, which is the question of whether or not influencer culture is dying. Initially, when I started seeing videos about this topic, I have to admit, I got a little bit nervous. As somebody who does work in an influencer adjacent career path, when people were like, oh, well, it's dying, it's no longer important and nobody cares about it, I was like, I just got here. But then it dawned on me, I'm not the influencer that they're talking about. I don't even really consider myself an influencer. I think of it like this. There are content creators. There are people that post content. They may do 1 or 2 ads with a brand, but mostly they just post content. They interact with their subscribers. They post more content, and then they go about their business. Influencers, to me, are people that really, really drive commerce. They're people that can set up an Amazon store and everybody's like, okay, I want to know what he or she is wearing. I want to know where they got this. I want to know where they got that. They are people that have a connection to media companies in a more real and actualized way. So they are people that are at events. They are people that are being flown out on brand trips. These are the kinds of people and the kinds of treatment that people were talking about was coming to an end when they talk about influencer culture dying. So that being said, when I was hearing about this conversation, I was like, oh, well, sucks for them. And I just kind of moved on with my life until this past weekend when New York Fashion Week happened, or until this past week when New York Fashion Week happened. And the conversation really rose up again. And I felt more and more like people were really like, we are tired of influencers. We're tired of it in any form. And there was continued talk about the idea of, we just want, maybe not for influencing culture to completely die, but we need our influencers to look like something else. We need it to look like something else. So in this video, I want to talk about just like the general ick I feel influencers give people and why everybody is so excited. Because I feel like a lot of times when people are like, influencer culture is over, there's glee behind that. Like, there's real joy. People are excited to see influencers not having the power that they have anymore. I also want to talk about this new concept of influencing that the people have said that they want to see and that brands have spoken out about wanting to see. And finally, I want to talk about what I think is missing from this conversation. Okay, so let's start off with the general ick I think influencers give people. If you are an old like me, you may not know what the ick means, what that is. And that's just basically the youth's way of saying a feeling of just, ugh, you don't want to deal with something anymore. You're done with it. You want to kind of turn your back on it. Just like it sort of makes you sick to your stomach. And I think that's what influencing and the way that we have come to know it, I think that's what it does to people. And I'm not going to go into like the history of influencing and this and that, because honestly, those videos are everywhere. They're already on YouTube. But if you do want to know about what the history of influencing is and how it started and, you know, how it became what it is today, I will post a video below about that subject that went kind of viral on this platform a couple of weeks ago, or actually a couple months ago now. And you can definitely check that out at any time. But what I am gonna say about influencing is I am aware that it started in the early 2010s, especially with the advent of Instagram, people getting paid by brands to post different things. I remember when I first discovered the fashion influencer and this idea that people were getting dressed in the morning and taking pictures of it and posting it online. And then they were publishing books about it. I remember when I went through the Barnes and Noble, this might have been around 2010 or 2012, I think it was. And I saw a book called What I Wore. And I was like, wait, what? And the book was connected to a blog. People were turning their just everyday lives into a business. And after that point, I started noticing, not just fashion influencers, but lifestyle influencers. So, hey, this is where we're eating at. This is where, we're doing this at. This is this, blah, blah, blah. I started noticing a lot of food content creators. And I think food content creation is not going anywhere, but food content creators slowly became influencers as well, tagging different brands and products that they were using, tagging different restaurants that were inviting them out, to taste food because they were so great at making it. And I want to say that when that all started, I very quickly noticed that those people who made that kind of content could make a lot of money. And then, of course, I think we have to talk about the OG influencers, the family that shall not be named, but we're going to go ahead and name them, the Kardashians, right? Making money, posting on Instagram, having brands pay to just appear in their ads. I almost did this a couple weeks ago when I did an ad myself, but I almost pulled a Scott Disick. I know you guys all remember this, or if you don't, here it is. When he didn't even care enough to write an original caption because the brand was like, hey, just put this. And he actually posted this online. And, we all had a hearty laugh at about how dumb that was. And then I did it a couple years later. But the point is that the Kardashians very quickly monetized their existence as this family who is famous for just existing. And they made money in the same way that a lot of civilian people were making money. And I think what happened then is influencers really did become celebrities within their own right. And so I think years later, what gives people the ick is that everybody sort of stepped back and they were like, who are these people that we put on a pedestal and why? And I want to talk really quickly about what that pedestal is. So one of the complaints that I saw coming from people who were talking about just their exhaustion with influencers, one of the complaints that I saw was that influencers sometimes will get online and they'll talk about how hard their job is. They will complain about their job. And people were saying, you guys are up on this pedestal and you have all this financial power. You can post one 10-minute video and make $20,000. Whereas I have to go to work for 4 to 5 months to make that much money. And again, that's where I draw the line between me and influencers who have to be afraid of their era ending. Cause I'm like, I don't know nothing about that. I ain't never even been close to that kind of money. But I do think that is something that makes people exhausted, especially when influencers turn around and they're like, oh, this is hard. Because I mean, in the broad scheme of things, it's not really hard in a traditional way of speaking, right? I also think another thing that gives people the ick when they think about influencers and makes them excited to see their downfall is the idea that they really are getting paid for doing nothing. So it's enough that you have to put in minimal work to get back this big reward. But what are you actually doing? I think about this situation with this young lady. She goes by the name of Tara's World over on TikTok. And if you're on TikTok and you're a person of color, specifically a Black person, because I hear Black people talk about this all the time, so you only see people's content from people who look like you. I totally understand that. But keeping that in mind, you may not have seen what happened with this young lady about a week and a half ago. Basically what happened is she made a post where she was like, nobody works anymore. I check my Be Real, and Be Real is this app that the youth use to, you can look it up. I'll link it below. But she's like, I checked my Be Real and everybody who I follow on there is in bed. And, nobody works anymore. Why aren't people at work? I go out, I'm so productive. What's going on? According to Tara, and this is what I got from it when I first saw it, she was making a play on the whole Kim Kardashian, nobody wants to work these days, why doesn't anybody want to work, so on and so forth. I took it as a little joke. I took it as a joke that wasn't aimed towards me. I did not care at all. What does this young, very, very young white woman have to do with me and my life? She has over 1 million followers. She's always just traveling or hanging out for fun, once again, just getting paid for not really doing much of anything. I didn't take her seriously. I was alone in that. The internet, TikTok particularly, ripped this girl apart. They think pieced her to death. There were so many stitches and comments and responses and, people jumping on, and let me say this, and you did, just attacking this kid. And I was like, she walked right into that, because people really hate the fact that there are people out there like her who can get paid for just living their life. And so as a result, you don't get to complain, you don't get to critique, you definitely don't get to say phrases that can come across as tone deaf, like nobody wants to work anymore. And most importantly, when you remind people how sort of mediocre and ridiculous your job is, basically when you associate your non-work with the idea of actual work, you're gonna piss people off. And that's what she did, and people didn't let her live that down. But I think it just plays into the whole idea of people being exhausted, that there are people out there who are able to get paid an exorbitant amount of money for traveling, living their day-to-day life. They're basically just being paid to live. And so I think that's why when the rumors were going around and people were talking about the era of influencing being over, I think that's why people were excited. They wanted to see that type of influencing end. So what is the type of influencing that people want to see stick around? This is what I picked up. This article right here, which I cannot read the end of because they want me to sign in. So I had to pick up bits and pieces of it from other places on the internet and watch a lot of corroborating videos, basically. But this article right here, I think, says it all. People want influencers that actually have an air of responsibility to their life. Not just people who can go out and, like the young lady, Tara from Tara's World, they can go out and they can drink a beer in a restaurant and talk to the camera and get paid not only, in revenue from people cluing in and watching that, but if they decide to do an ad from a company, they can also make an exorbitant amount of money from that. They want to see people that have to go to work, that have a 9-to-5, that create their influencing around their day-to-day life, which is actually filled with more than just being themselves. People want to see corporate influencers. They want to see influencers who are teachers. They want to see influencers who, work in hospitals. They want to see people who have normal lives that appear normal, that appear down to earth, people that they can relate to more. Relatability is huge. They want to see more of that. Those are the people that they will allow themselves to be influenced by. I do want to talk for a minute about the concept of relatability and how it relates to this conversation. So last year I made a video talking about something very closely related to this. I made a video about the whole, I don't want to call it a saga, but it was something that was happening on social media where people were talking about Black influencers, specifically Black women who may have started off in some way, and through influencing, through being able to build a massive audience, through being able to, be the kind of person that is also able to couple with media companies and advertising companies and, be able to earn great revenue, they were able to lift themselves up and become millionaires many times over. And because of that change, people felt like they could no longer relate to them. Like what initially made them attractive was no longer there. In my video, I talked about how I didn't have this issue with them because I never saw them like me in the first place. I never saw these women as somebody that I watched because I related to them. I watched them because in some way they could show me something that I didn't know how to do. Like I know one person specifically who was brought up over and over again was Jackie Aina. She's gone from doing makeup videos in her bathroom to very much so being an extremely successful businesswoman. And people were saying, well, she's not relatable now. I never related to her in the first place.
So after I recorded this, I thought about the sentence that I just said, and I was like, that's obviously not true, because there's a lot of people that did makeup tutorials back in the day, like Laura Lee, Nikki Tutorials, Jaclyn Hill, Manny MUA. Is that a person? Did he have a channel? There were so many makeup gurus during that time. I didn't watch a thing. I watched Jackie, I watched Too Much Mouth, and I watched Naima Tang. Why? Because I related to them as Black women, but I didn't relate to them in the sense that I thought we were living similar lives. So, for example, with Jackie, when she started to make a ton of money and, she started to release her makeup lines with various companies, I was like, okay, good. In my mind, she was in a certain position. And I think if you did enter into your parasocial relationship with her on a different level, like maybe if you saw yourself in her, just doing humble makeup tutorials from her apartment and then moving around and, still keeping it humble and keeping herself low to the ground. You were like, yes, I can relate to this. Then your response to her glowing up and experiencing different financial realities was going to be different. But I never saw her as me in that sense. And I think that is what I am trying to explain here. But to say I didn't relate to her at all would be a lie, because the reason why I watched her information anyway, the reason why she was allowed, she was the chosen one to, and the other makeup gurus that I mentioned also, they were the chosen ones because we were Black women, dark-skinned Black women. And I can look at what you do and I can pick something up from that. And I trust what you have to say about these products. So I did relate to them, but not in the sense that when their pockets started growing, they were different. If the content was still there, if the tutorials were still there, I didn't care what your house looked like. I didn't care how many bags you had. I'm not interested in all that stuff anyway. So I wasn't on that train of people saying those things. But to say I didn't relate to her at all, that is a lie. And please forgive me for continuing to lie throughout the rest of this part of the video, because it didn't dawn on me until I was editing that the reason why we even choose whose tutorials we're going to watch is because we have to see some of ourselves in it, or some of the person that we want to be. That's just how our brains work. We have to see some of ourselves in order to engage with the content at all. Anyway, let's go back.
To me, she was somebody who told me, hey, this is a great product. This is why it's a great product. We're very similar in skin tone. For about 5 years before I bought anything, I checked to see if Jackie had covered it first. She was somebody who was in a different position in my life, but definitely not one of relatability. And so watching her grow and expand and become this different person, I didn't care. It wasn't something that affected me one way or the other. But I do know that relatability is a big part of why people decide to buy in. I talked about in that video about how in our brain we have something called mirror neurons, and we're constantly looking around the world to see realities that mirror our own, so we understand how to construct our version of what the world should look like. And so I think a lot of people did buy in because they were like, oh, she's like me. She's a Black girl. She's doing da-da-da-da. I never saw her that way. And a lot of the other influencers they were bringing up, I was like, they were never anything like me. So to watch them grow and to watch their finances expand, it wasn't none of my business. I was like, whatever, you gonna make another video or what's going on? I wasn't on that train, but I think a lot of people are. And so their influencers definitely have to be somebody that they can relate to. Now, I will say this. I will say that some of the feedback and some of the vitriol that influencers get is a little bit unearned, I feel. I noticed that during New York Fashion Week, a lot of people were upset that influencers were in the front row, that influencers were getting these press coverage, that influencers were, getting basically all this time, and the actual fashion employees and fashion, the people that really make the industry run weren't getting the same experience that they really were used to getting. And there was a lot of talk about how TikTokers specifically had sort of ruined Fashion Week for a lot of these, diehard fashion enthusiasts. And this lady chimed into this conversation over on TikTok, and she basically said, hey, I work for a media company that has to get people to the fashion shows, and it's always been like this. But back in the day, instead of influencers on the front row, it was your actresses, it was your socialites, it was your, it was your people who were known just for being known. And now we have our TikTokers, and that's who we've got, because we're always looking for people who are going to raise our business's social score. And if you have a TikToker that can come to the show with their millions of, followers or hundreds of thousands of followers, they can vlog what they're doing and vlog their experience at the show. That helps me. That helps my business. Basically, what she was encouraging people to do is to stop, for lack of a better word, stop bastardizing, the idea of the TikToker as a valid job, and recognize that they are the new socialite. They are the new strength in this market. And so unfortunately, they will be in these spaces. But just like the socialites before them, they're never going to really change what is going on in those spaces. And there's somebody who, she also chimed in, and she was like, even if they're there, we're the ones that decided what they were going to wear before they even got there, because we're still the people who decide what fashion actually goes into the stores, what gets bought and what gets made. And in her comment section, somebody was like, this is the speech from The Devil Wears Prada. If you've ever seen The Devil Wears Prada, it's the, where Miranda Priestley is like, in reality, everything you're wearing was chosen for you by the people in this room. And yeah, I 100% agreed with that. I think a lot of people they didn't like seeing the influencers out there, because I don't think they respect TikTokers as like valid media professionals, and that is what it is. But I thought that a lot of the vitriol against them was a little bit undue. Now, I will say I wasn't there. I didn't even know New York Fashion Week was happening. I'm not a fashion girl, and like I said before, I'm a content creator, not an influencer. So I'm not gonna get an invitation or nothing like that. You know what I mean? But from what I was hearing, it just sounded like it was kind of like a club that they didn't want these kids to be in. But because of their influence, because of their audience, because of the fact that they could impact buying power so much, they very much did deserve to be there. I think it comes down to people expanding their minds and realizing that there is a certain influencer, there's a certain social media personality that is very popular, and therefore they're gonna try and be in your space in places like this. And either up the security, make the list tighter, or get used to it. Again, I'm an outsider. That's just what I saw. Looking at that from the outside. If you have personal experience with it, definitely chime in the comments below. So the last thing I want to talk about is something I feel like is being left out of the conversation, which goes back to what I was saying about the people at New York Fashion Week. Influencing is it's this generation's, and whether you're talking about millennials or you're talking about Gen Z, just this within this last 20 years, they are the socialites. They are the people that, for whatever reason, society has picked them and said, I'm going to follow you and listen to what you have to say. A lot of them are very, very good at their job. I feel like they are deserving of the incredible perks they get for figuring out how to manipulate their platforms in such a way.
Choo choo, everybody on board the Interlude Express. No, let me just say, I think manipulate is the wrong word to use here, because I think that is something that also exhausts people about influencers, this feeling like influencers lie. But I will say that when I mean manipulate, I'm talking about they figured out what their audience wants to see and a way to consistently deliver that to them over time. The reason why people aren't successful as influencers and don't make it into content creation is because they don't figure out what that is. How can I take these people who have decided, hey, I want to listen to what you have to say, and figure out what they want to hear and figure it out to the point where I'm able to really, really expand my audience? Everybody can't do that. So when I say manipulate, I mean that. I mean, look at what people want and deliver that to them. I do not mean lie to people. I do not mean make up falsehoods about your life. I do not, because we've seen influencers do that as well, right? And that's not what I'm talking about. When I mean manipulate, I mean, how can you take these raw materials that you have, this audience that wants to engage with you, this reality that is your life that you're going to be showing off? How can you take that and turn that into a business that affords you a certain lifestyle? If you can figure that out, I don't have no hard feelings towards you when I see you at the front row of Fashion Week, when I see that you're making millions of dollars, because I know that is a hard thing to figure out. And of course, for some people, it's going to be easier. If you're on TikTok, you know about that little girl, Kylan, who was a little sorority girl from, I don't know, I keep saying little girl. These are grown women. Is she grown? She might be 18, 19. Well, whatever. She's an adult. But she is a sorority girl from the University of Alabama. And I remember during a sorority rush, everybody fell in love with Kylan and her, I hope you have a good day and not a great, what did she say? A great day and not a good day. And there was a girl who made a video and was like, why is she the one that people want to watch? If you go online and you search, you can go on TikTok and you can search this up. I'm not gonna go through all the trouble of like digging out the videos, because there's a chance people don't even make it that far in this video. And so I figured out, you need to work smarter, not harder. And when I'm working on a video topic that my audience maybe not really be interested in, there's just a certain amount of work I'm not gonna make myself do. But anyway, people had to, break it to this young lady. They were like, yo, well, Kylan is popular because, number one, she's blonde haired, she's blue eyed, she's very rich. That's how it comes across. She's super friendly. She's upbeat. These are all things that are going to make people naturally want to buy in. But the thing that Kylan had to figure out how to do is, when do I present my content? How do I present it? What ways do I present it? How can I, there's still science and there's still thinking beyond that. So anyway, that's what I mean by manipulate. Taking those raw materials of people basically liking you and wanting to know more about you and turning it into something that makes you a great deal of money. Not everybody can do that. That's what I'm talking about.
Everybody who creates content and everybody who sets out to do that is not going to be able to achieve those things. I also think that influencing definitely has a threshold, or you have an expiration date. I don't think that certain people can be in their position forever. I don't think that certain types of content is popular forever. I see on TikTok all the time people jumping online and they're like, hey, I'm making a video about people that I've blocked, and no hate to any of these creators. I decided to block them. And they'll go through and they'll list people that have millions of followers that I thought everybody liked. A lot of times though, I don't even know who these people are, which also speaks to how saturated this general area of the world is. But to me, that speaks to just people realizing that your content creation, your influencing, it all has an expiration date. It can't go on forever. I mean, me personally, I see myself doing this for maybe about another year, maybe another year. I'm trying to make it another year. We'll see. But I definitely am like, okay, this won't last forever. I'm just gonna speak for content creators. There is a lot of you gotta, first of all, you gotta have the content. So you gotta have like whatever's going on in your life. Secondly, the idea that it's not hard work is a lie. It is a lie. Jackie Ina, I mentioned her earlier. She recently returned to YouTube and she was like, yo, here's where I've been. This is why I took a break. I got burned out. And at the beginning of that video, when she was talking about it, she was like, please understand my feelings are valid. I know a lot of times when influencers, when we want to complain, people are like, oh, shut up. You get paid for doing nothing. But no, my feelings are valid. And so if you have a problem with influencers, complaining, you got to leave this video. And I thought that was interesting that she had to say that because, I mean, it is true, just like what happened to the Terror girl, like people want to hear influencers have to say anything negative about their job or their reality. But the one thing Jackie spoke about was just the burnout, the having to come up with the ideas, the doing everything by yourself, the figuring everything out on your own. And basically what happens is, I think, unless you take breaks, unless you step back, unless you, do what she eventually did, which was get a producer and an editor, which I wish that I could pay producers and editors. That would be awesome. I cannot, so don't send me any emails. I've had that before. Somebody was like, oh, I could edit, do blah, blah, blah. Listen, man, I don't want nobody making no video about me. This is all about how Stefco paid me pennies to edit her. No, thank you. So I will do it myself for now. But yeah, I think unless you can figure out how to really manage all that stuff well, this can be incredibly draining. And I'm just talking about content creation. I'm not even talking about the other part of heavily dealing with brands. I deal with a brand every once in a blue moon, doing month-long campaigns, having to post on multiple platforms, making sure that you're keeping up a certain lifestyle. So here's the thing. People can get so upset about content creators and influencers not being relatable, but the second they are, oh, that's boring. Because the truth about humanity, or the truth about human beings, is we want relatable as much as we want aspirational. We want to see the pretty stuff. We flock to that stuff more. It's why every time you have somebody who's like, I'm just a regular person, they get trampled on in views and in following by somebody who's like, yeah, I'm not actually regular at all. I'm going on trips. I'm doing this. I'm at this brand event. Those people are always going to do a lot better. So I think a lot of times when people criticize influencer culture, it's really hypocritical because it's like you are criticizing them, but your desires for what you want to see put them up there on that pedestal. And they're gonna stay there probably for a long time, because every time we say, oh, it's done, we're exhausted, somebody new comes online. They've got the right look, they've got the right life, they put it out there, people gobble it up. I think the one thing that I will say about this whole conversation is that no matter how you feel about influencers, and how you feel about the era coming to an end, which, by the way, I don't. I just think it's becoming more diverse. I think that there's a new crop of people in town. And I think that once the TikTok is over, there'll be a new group. We saw the YouTube influencers. We saw the Vine influencers. We saw the Instagram influencers. Now it's TikTok. I think, one day it'll be a new group. And every single time I feel like the old heads, the long-standing organizations, they just have to expand and make room for these people, because influencers are the reflection of the audience that is watching you and is watching your product being made and being put out into the market. And so as much as, you may want to criticize the industry and say that they don't matter and it's not important anymore, that's just not true. So those are my feelings about it. I saw a lot of people just, going hard about how they were tired of influencers complaining and they're sick of this and they're sick of that and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, but you're still following them. You're still liking, you're still downloading, you're still, and I want to say this, if you had the chance, because I know me, I'm not even going to insult. Yeah, I'm not going to sit up here and play no games. If I had the chance to make $30,000 for posting one video, yeah, I'm going to do that. Somebody made an excellent video. They were like, we understand that you may say, oh, or she said, I understand, excuse me, just one person. I understand you may say that you want an influencer who is also a full-time corporate employee, but here's the deal. If I can make my entire corporate salary in 3 months that I would make in 1 year, I'm going to go for this job, because I may not have the energy to do this forever. I may not have the interest in this forever, but I'm young and I'm going to take this opportunity now. And you would do it too for a check. You know, you would do it as well. So instead of, you know, being so upset about it, I think more people are probably going to figure out a way to let themselves in. And when that becomes too saturated, there will be another group. I just think that that's the way that these things work. So what do you think about the whole conversation? Do you feel like influencing is dead? Do you feel like it's still evolving? Again, I just wanted to talk about it because after New York Fashion Week and all the things that were being said about the, you know, the TikTok kids, it made me realize, or not kids, but the TikTok people, it made me realize, number one, I am not an influencer. I am a content creator, because I didn't even know New York Fashion Week was happening. And number two, people have a lot of hate towards individuals that, well, I don't really think deserve all of that, in my personal opinion. So, of course, I want to know what you think. This video ended up being a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but that's okay. And as always, thanks for watching.